Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As the sun's rays danced through the window, Cameron felt a sense of anticipation prickle his skin. He held the delicate satin of what was once just a mere dress, but had become his secret obsession. The wedding gown, a symbol of Eleanor's love, held a mysterious allure for him. On this morning, as sunlight bathed the room, he dared to indulge his curiosity. With trembling hands, he carefully slipped the ivory gown over his body, the fabric caressing him like a lover. The pearl accents shimmered, catching the light as if celebrating his transgression. The dress seemed to come alive, awakening a whirlwind of emotions. He mouthed the words in the silent room, seeking permission for this momentary pleasure. The bodice hugged his chest in a way that should have felt wrong, but somehow didn't. The voluminous skirt billowed around his legs, layers of tulle and satin creating the perfect silhouette. Cameron stepped toward the full-length mirror, his breath catching at the reflection. The ivory color complemented his complexion beautifully, making his brown hair seem richer, darker against the pale fabric. Without thinking, he reached for the delicate veil, still preserved in its box on the shelf. With trembling fingers, he settled it atop his head, the sheer material cascading down his back.
There,
he exhaled, something inside him clicking into place. He turned slowly, watching how the dress moved with him, how it transformed his body into something elegant, something graceful. He felt beautiful. Cameron had never admitted this desire to anyone, not even himself fully, but in this moment, staring at his reflection, he couldn't deny the rightness of it. The sound of the front door opening shattered the spell. "I forgot my water bottle!" Eleanor's voice called from downstairs. Panic seized him. There was no time to remove the dress, nowhere to hide. Cameron stood frozen before the mirror, watching the doorknob turn in its reflection as Eleanor pushed into their bedroom. Her gym bag dropped to the floor with a soft thud. "Cam?" He couldn't speak, couldn't move. Shame and fear paralyzed him as he waited for the explosion, the disgust, the end of everything. Eleanor stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Cameron braced himself, but instead of harsh words, her hand reached out to adjust the veil that had slipped askew. "You didn't zip it properly," she said softly, moving behind him. Her fingers worked the zipper up the remaining distance. "There. That's better." Cameron stared at her reflection in the mirror, confusion replacing fear. "You're not upset?" Eleanor's eyes met his in the glass. "I suspected something. The way you'd look at certain clothes in stores, how your hand would linger on fabrics." She smoothed the shoulder of the dress. "I just didn't know how to ask." "I don't know what this means," Cameron admitted, his voice barely audible. "We'll figure it out together." She turned him gently, facing him directly. "But first, if you're going to wear my wedding dress, at least do it properly." Eleanor disappeared into the bathroom, returning with her makeup bag. "Sit," she instructed, patting the edge of the bed. Cameron obeyed, the dress pooling around him in a sea of ivory. With expert hands, Eleanor applied foundation, blending it seamlessly into his skin. "Close your eyes," she murmured, sweeping eyeshadow across his lids. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, as she outlined his lips with a neutral pencil. Eleanor paused, considering. Because I love you. And because I've never seen you look at yourself the way you did when I walked in. Like you were finally seeing something true. Tears threatened, but Eleanor tutted. Don't you dare ruin this mascara. When she finished, she guided him back to the mirror. Cameron hardly recognized himself. The makeup was subtle but transformative, accentuating features he'd never noticed before. With the dress and veil, the illusion was startling. What do you think? Eleanor asked, standing beside him in the reflection. I look... Cameron searched for words. Beautiful, Eleanor finished. You look beautiful, Cam. The word settled over him like a benediction. Something shifted inside him, a door unlocking.
I think I might be...
He started, unable to finish. Eleanor squeezed his hand. A woman? The question hung in the air between them. Cameron had never allowed himself to think the words, but hearing Eleanor say them aloud felt like permission. Slowly, he nodded. Okay, Eleanor said simply. What would you like me to call you? Cameron hadn't thought that far ahead. He stared at his reflection, at the person he'd always been beneath the surface, trying to imagine a name that would fit.
Camille.
He whispered after a moment.
I think I'd like to be Camille.
Eleanor smiled, testing the name. Camille. It suits you. For the first time in memory, Camille, felt the weight of pretense lift. The person in the mirror wasn't a man in a dress. It was her, as she was meant to be. What happens now? She asked, uncertainty creeping back in. Now? Eleanor took her hand. Now we talk. And then tomorrow, maybe we go shopping. One step at a time. Camille nodded, overwhelmed by the sudden potential of her future. I'm afraid, she admitted. Me too, Eleanor said honestly. But we've faced scarier things together. As they sat on the edge of the bed, still in wedding attire, Camille began to speak, decades of suppressed feelings finally finding voice. And Eleanor listened, squeezing her hand whenever words failed. Outside, afternoon drifted toward evening, casting long shadows through the window. But inside, in that quiet bedroom, something new was dawning. 6 months later, Camille stood before a different mirror in a different dress. This one was copper-colored, designed to complement her brown hair, which now fell in soft waves past her shoulders. Hormone therapy had begun to soften her features, rounding her face and giving her body a more feminine contour. You're going to be late, Eleanor called from the doorway, looking elegant in a navy pantsuit. I know. Camille dabbed on a final touch of lipstick. First day nerves. Eleanor crossed the room, straightening Camille's necklace. The university's art department is lucky to have you. Professor or not, you're still the same brilliant artist. Camille smiled, though anxiety still fluttered in her stomach. Today would be her first day teaching as her authentic self. Her department had been supportive of her transition, but facing a classroom full of students was another matter entirely. What if they don't take me seriously? She asked, voicing her deepest fear. Then they're fools, Eleanor said firmly. Your talent didn't change, just your appearance, and frankly, you look far more comfortable in your skin now than you ever did before. It was true. Despite the challenges of the past 6 months, the coming out to friends and family, the medical appointments, the occasional stares from strangers, Camille had never felt more herself. The early days had been the hardest, stumbling through new pronouns and name changes, learning to move through the world as a woman. But with each passing week, the old facade faded further into memory. "Remember what Dr. Patel said," Eleanor reminded her. "Confidence is key. You belong in that classroom just as much as you did last semester." Camille nodded, picking up her leather portfolio case. "How do I look? Professional enough?" "Absolutely." Eleanor kissed her cheek. "Knock 'em dead, Professor Richards." The drive to campus gave Camille time to settle her nerves, rehearsing her introductory lecture in her head. She'd opted to address her transition directly in the first class, hoping to move past it quickly to focus on the semester's curriculum. Her brown hair was pulled back in a neat chignon, her makeup subtle but polished. The copper dress was modest but flattering, paired with sensible heels she'd practiced walking in for weeks. The familiar route to the Fine Arts Building felt different somehow, as if she were navigating it for the first time. In a way, she was. Parking in her usual faculty spot, Camille gathered her materials and took a deep breath before stepping out of the car. The campus was buzzing with first-day activity, students hurrying across the quad with coffee cups and new backpacks. Camille kept her eyes forward, spine straight as she walked toward her building. A few colleagues nodded in greeting, some with visible curiosity, others with encouraging smiles. Professor Daniels, the department chair, intercepted her in the hallway outside her classroom. "Camille, I was hoping to catch you before your first class." He handed her a small gift bag. "Just a little something from the department. A welcome back present." Touched by the gesture, Camille peeked inside to find a delicate nameplate for her desk. Professor Camille Richards. "Thank you," she said, genuinely moved. "This means a lot." "We're glad to have you back," Daniels replied, squeezing her shoulder. "And I meant what I said last month. Any problems? My door is open." With a final nod of encouragement, he continued down the hallway, leaving Camille alone before her classroom door. Through the small window, she could see students already filing in, choosing seats. This was the moment of truth. Squaring her shoulders, Camille pushed open the door and walked confidently to the front of the room. Conversations quieted as students noticed her, curiosity evident on many faces. Setting her portfolio on the desk, she turned to face the class. "Good morning. I'm Professor Richards, and this is Advanced Drawing Techniques." She wrote her name on the whiteboard, the chalk firm and steady in her hand. "Before we review the syllabus, I'd like to address something you might have noticed." The room was silent, all eyes on her. "Since last semester, I've undergone a gender transition. My name is now Camille, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the same person who taught many of you last year, with the same expectations and standards." She smiled, feeling her tension start to dissolve. "Now, if there are no questions about that, I'd like to move on to the exciting work we'll be doing this semester." There was a momentary pause, then a student in the front row, Danielle, who'd taken 2 of Camille's previous courses, raised her hand. "Professor, I just wanted to say your hair looks really nice like that." The simple comment broke the ice, eliciting smiles around the room. Camille touched her brown locks self-consciously, warmth spreading through her chest. "Thank you, Danielle." Another student spoke up. "Does this mean the grading will be easier this semester?" Laughter rippled through the class, and Camille found herself joining in. "Nice try, Mr. Gonzalez, but I'm afraid my standards remain just as exacting." Just like that, the moment of potential awkwardness passed. As Camille distributed the syllabus and began discussing the semester's objectives, She felt the last of her anxiety melt away. This was where she belonged, doing what she loved, finally as her true self. When class ended, a small group of students lingered, approaching her desk with questions about assignments and textbooks. Their easy interaction, treating her no differently than they had before, was perhaps the greatest affirmation she could have received. As the last student left, Camille sat at her desk, running her fingers over the new nameplate. Professor Camille Richards. 6 months ago, she couldn't have imagined this moment. The journey hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead. But for now, in this classroom, she was exactly who she was meant to be. The following spring, Camille stood in front of their bedroom mirror, adjusting the emerald green dress she'd chosen for tonight's faculty awards dinner. Her brown hair had grown longer, now cascading in loose curls past her shoulders. Nearly a year of hormone therapy had further softened her features and redistributed her body's curves in ways that still sometimes surprised her when she caught her reflection. "Zip me up?" she asked as Eleanor entered the room, stunning in a black cocktail dress. "You're nominated for Teacher of the Year, and you're nervous about a zipper?" Eleanor teased, securing the dress. "There. Perfect." Camille turned to the side, studying her silhouette. "Do you think this dress is too much? Too flashy for an academic dinner?" "It's gorgeous, and so are you." Eleanor handed her a pair of teardrop earrings. "Besides, the art department is supposed to have a little flair." As Camille fastened the earrings, she caught Eleanor watching her with a soft expression. "What?" "Nothing. Just, you seem happy. Truly happy." The observation made Camille pause. Happiness had become so natural she hardly noticed it anymore. "I am," she realized. "Even with all the complications, I don't think I've ever been this comfortable in my own skin." Those complications had been numerous. Legal name changes, insurance battles, strained relationships with some extended family members who struggled with her transition. But there had been unexpected joys, too. The deepening of her marriage with Eleanor, who had proven to be an unwavering ally. The students who told her she'd inspired them to live more authentically. The rich community of friends, both old and new, who embraced her journey. "Ready to go win an award?" Eleanor asked, handing Camille her clutch. "Ready to go lose gracefully to Professor Martinez from chemistry," Camille corrected with a laugh. "Have you seen his student evaluations? The man's a teaching legend." The drive to the university's grand hall was filled with comfortable conversation about Eleanor's latest interior design project and Camille's upcoming gallery showing. They'd fallen into a new rhythm as a couple, their relationship evolving alongside Camille's transition. In many ways, they were closer than ever, having weathered the kind of transformation that could either strengthen or break a marriage. The awards dinner was already underway when they arrived, faculty members and administration mingling over cocktails before dinner. Camille felt a momentary flutter of nerves as they entered the ornate hall, but it dissipated as colleagues greeted them warmly. "Richards, saving you seats at our table," called Professor Wilson from the English department, waving them over. His wife, Patricia, embraced Camille warmly, complimenting her dress. "Green is definitely your color," Patricia insisted, settling in beside them. "Makes your brown hair look absolutely lustrous." Dinner was served, a lavish, multi-course affair, punctuated by speeches from the university president and various deans. As dessert was being cleared, the provost approached the podium for the evening's awards presentations. Under the table, Eleanor squeezed Camille's hand as the provost announced, "And now, The award for outstanding teaching in the arts and humanities. Camille held her breath, genuinely surprised when she heard, Professor Camille Richards, Department of Fine Arts. The table erupted in applause as Camille rose on unsteady legs. She made her way to the podium, accepting the crystal award with a stunned smile. Thank you, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. This past year has been one of profound change for me, personally and professionally. I want to thank my colleagues and students for their acceptance and support, proving that what matters most in education isn't who we are, but how we connect with knowledge and with each other. Her eyes found Eleanor in the crowd, radiating pride. And to my wife, Eleanor, whose love and patience made everything possible. Thank you for seeing me before I could even see myself. The applause as she returned to her seat felt like vindication, not just for her teaching, but for her courage to become herself. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and well wishes. By the time they headed home, Camille's cheeks ached from smiling. I can't believe I won, she said as they drove through the quiet streets. I can, Eleanor replied simply. You've always been an exceptional teacher. Now you're just an exceptional teacher who happens to be glowing with authenticity. At home, Camille carefully placed the award on their mantel before slipping out of her heels. Eleanor brought 2 glasses of champagne from the kitchen, proposing a toast. To Professor Richards, who keeps breaking barriers and expectations. They clinked glasses, and Camille added, and to Eleanor Richards, without whom there would be no Camille. Later, as they prepared for bed, Camille paused before the bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. The woman who looked back at her was no longer a stranger or a tentative experiment. She was simply Camille, professor, artist, wife, a person who had found the courage to align her outer self with her inner truth. Eleanor appeared behind her, wrapping her arms around Camille's waist. Penny for your thoughts? I was just thinking about that day in the wedding dress, Camille said, leaning back against her. How terrified I was when you found me, how certain I was that everything was about to fall apart. And instead, everything finally came together. Camille turned in Eleanor's arms. Thank you for helping me become who I am. Eleanor brushed a strand of brown hair from Camille's face. I didn't help you become who you are. You were always Camille. I just helped you find her. As they settled into bed, Camille reflected on the journey of the past year, the challenges overcome, the joys discovered, the person she'd always been finally brought to light. There would be more hurdles ahead, certainly, but facing them as her authentic self made all the difference. The award on the mantel was more than recognition for her teaching. It was affirmation that choosing truth had not diminished her, but had instead allowed her to shine more brightly than ever before. In becoming Camille, she hadn't lost anything essential. She had simply, finally, become whole. 2 years after that afternoon in the wedding dress, Camille stood on a beach at sunset, toes curling into warm sand. The ocean breeze played with her brown hair, now long enough to reach the middle of her back. She wore a flowing white sundress that caught the golden light of the setting sun, making her appear to glow from within. Are you ready? Eleanor asked, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. She looked radiant in a pale blue dress that complemented her blonde hair. Camille nodded, accepting the glass. More than ready. They were celebrating their 10th wedding anniversary with a vow renewal, a ceremony that felt, in many ways, more meaningful than their original wedding. This time, they were recommitting to each other not as husband and wife, but as wife and wife, acknowledging the journey that had transformed not just Camille, but their relationship as well. A small group of their closest friends and family had gathered on the private stretch of beach, setting up chairs in a semicircle facing the ocean. String lights twinkled from posts planted in the sand, and flower petals marked a makeshift aisle. "Your mother keeps checking her watch," Eleanor noted. "I think she's more nervous than we are." Camille smiled, watching her mother fuss with the floral arrangements. Helen Richards' journey to acceptance had been difficult, but ultimately triumphant. After initial shock and confusion, she had become one of Camille's fiercest advocates, even joining a parent support group to better understand her daughter's experience. "Let's not keep her waiting then," Camille said, setting down her champagne. As they moved toward the gathered guests, Camille felt a profound sense of rightness. The officiant, their friend Marcus, who had gotten ordained online specifically for this occasion, stepped forward to welcome everyone. "We're gathered here today to celebrate love that transcends labels and expectations," Marcus began. "Eleanor and Camille have already proven that their commitment to each other can weather profound change. Today, they reaffirm that commitment under the open sky, exactly as they are." Camille and Eleanor faced each other, hands joined as the sunset painted the sky in spectacular shades of pink and orange. When it came time for vows, Eleanor spoke first. "Camille," she began, voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. 10 years ago, I married my best friend, not yet knowing your true name or the journey we would undertake together. I promised then to love you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. I had no idea those vows would also include loving you through transition and transformation. But I have never regretted a single moment." She squeezed Camille's hands tighter. "Today, I make new promises. I promise to continue growing with you. I promise to stand beside you against anyone who fails to see your beauty and worth. And I promise to love you not in spite of your courage to become yourself, but because of it." Tears welled in Camille's eyes as she began her own vows. "Eleanor, when you found me in your wedding dress that day, I thought it was the end of everything. Instead, it was the beginning. You didn't just accept me. You helped me accept myself." The breeze lifted her brown hair as she continued. "I vow to honor the extraordinary gift you've given me, the freedom to be authentic. I vow to cherish the way you see me, even when I struggle to see myself clearly. And I vow to keep discovering who we can be together as our best and truest selves." Marcus guided them through the exchange of new rings, simple platinum bands engraved with the date of their vow renewal and the words, "Begin again." "By the power vested in me," Marcus proclaimed, "I affirm what is already true, that Eleanor and Camille are joined in love and partnership for all their days." Cheers erupted from their small gathering as the newly recommitted couple sealed their vows with a kiss. The celebration continued into the evening, with dinner at tables set up on the beach and dancing under strings of lights and stars. During a quiet moment, Camille found herself standing at the water's edge, watching waves break in the moonlight. Her father joined her, his presence a surprise and a gift. Robert Richards had struggled the most with Camille's transition, his traditional values clashing with a reality he hadn't been prepared to face. Their relationship had been strained for months, contact limited to awkward phone calls and brief visits. "Beautiful ceremony," he said, hands in the pockets of his linen suit. "Thank you for coming," Camille replied.
It means a lot.
Robert nodded, staring out at the ocean.
I want to apologize, Camille, for not being there for you these past couple years, for making things harder than they needed to be.
The use of her name, which he had resisted for so long, brought fresh tears to her eyes. You're here now, she said simply.
Your mother helped me understand, he admitted. And watching you tonight, with Eleanor, it's clear to me that you're happier than I've ever seen you, more yourself.
I am, Camille confirmed. I didn't transition to become someone different, Dad. I did it to finally be who I always was. Robert turned to really look at his daughter, taking in her brown hair lifting in the breeze, the contentment in her expression.
I see that now, and I'm proud of you, Camille. It takes courage to live your truth.
The reconciliation was a gift Camille hadn't dared hope for. As they rejoined the party, Eleanor met her gaze across the dance floor, raising an eyebrow in question. Camille smiled, nodding to indicate that all was well. Later, as they swayed together under the stars, Eleanor rested her head on Camille's shoulder. Happy anniversary, Professor Richards.
Happy anniversary, Mrs. Richards,
Camille replied, holding her close. Around them, their chosen family celebrated, the beach alive with laughter and music. Camille looked around at the scene, at her mother chatting animatedly with Eleanor's parents, at her father awkwardly but sincerely engaging with friends from the trans support group, at colleagues and students who had become cherished friends. This moment, this gathering, would have been unimaginable 2 years ago when she first trembled in that wedding dress. Yet here they were, celebrating not just survival, but flourishing. What are you thinking? Eleanor asked, noticing her distant look. Camille smiled, focusing on her wife's face. I'm thinking that life has a way of surprising you. Sometimes you put on a dress expecting to hide a part of yourself, only to discover it's the first step toward revealing who you truly are. Eleanor touched Camille's cheek gently. Here's to revelations, then, and to whatever surprises come next. As the night deepened around them, Camille Richards held her wife close, grateful for the journey that had brought her here, to this beach, to this moment, to this authentic life. The road hadn't always been easy, but standing in the moonlight, surrounded by love and acceptance, she knew with absolute certainty that it had been worth every step. The wedding dress that had once represented fear and secrecy had instead become the key to her freedom. And Eleanor, who could have turned away in that pivotal moment, had instead helped open the door to a future brighter than either of them could have imagined. One where Camille could finally live as herself, brown hair lifting in the ocean breeze, heart full and spirit free.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!